The notification pinged on my phone at 2:17 a.m. Dubai time, cutting through the artificial silence of my hotel room. Another Instagram post from my wife Brooke, tagged at some upscale restaurant back home in Cleveland. What caught my eye wasn't the overpriced salmon or her perfectly arranged smile. It was Derek Hall's arm casually draped across the back of her chair. Again. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Aaron Bishop, 42 years old, and I make my living keeping other people's secrets safe. 20 years in military intelligence, followed by a decade as a private security consultant. I know how to spot patterns, inconsistencies, lies, and right now, every instinct I'd honed was screaming that something was very, very wrong with my marriage. I scrolled through Brooke's recent posts with the methodical precision I'd once used to analyze terrorist communications. Derek appeared in 12 of her last 15 photos. Business partner, she called him. They were launching some high-end event planning venture together while I was halfway around the world, setting up digital security for an oil executive who'd received serious threats. The timeline bothered me. 3 months ago, Brooke had never mentioned Derek Hall. Now he was everywhere, picking up our kids from their private school, attending Olivia's soccer games, even sitting in what looked suspiciously like my spot at our kitchen island. I opened my laptop and did what I do best. I started digging. Derek Hall, 38, divorced tech entrepreneur. Clean credit, flashy LinkedIn profile, lived in a downtown high-rise that cost more per month than most people made in a year. On paper, he looked legitimate, but I'd learned long ago that paper could lie beautifully. I pulled up our joint bank account. Brooke had been busy, charges I didn't recognize, expensive dinners, shopping trips, a weekend at some boutique hotel in Sandusky, all while I was working 16-hour days in the desert, sending money home to support what I thought was my family. My phone buzzed. A text from my 14-year-old daughter, Olivia. Dad, when are you coming home? Mom says maybe we should change our last name to Hall. She says it sounds better for her business. I stared at that message until the screen went dark. Then I booked the earliest flight back to Cleveland. The 15-hour journey gave me plenty of time to think and to dig deeper. I had access to resources that most suspicious husbands didn't. Contacts in various agencies, databases that weren't exactly public, skills that the Army had spent considerable money teaching me. What I found made me freeze. Brooke hadn't just been lying about Derek. She'd been systematically erasing me from our family's official records. The kids' school paperwork had been altered, emergency contacts changed, my name removed as primary guardian, Derek Hall added, as family friend with pickup authorization. She'd opened new credit cards using our joint assets as collateral, cards I'd never seen or signed for. Most damning of all, she'd consulted a divorce attorney. The retainer payment showed up on one of those hidden credit cards, along with charges for a private investigator. They were building a case against me, documenting my abandonment of the family, my dangerous work overseas, my inability to provide stable home environment. I landed at Cleveland Hopkins at 6:30 p.m. on a gray October evening, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. Instead of going straight home, I drove to Riverside Elementary, where Max played in the after-school program. I wanted to test something. I'm here to pick up Max Bishop, I told the office secretary, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and suspicious instincts. She frowned at her computer screen. I'm sorry, but you're not listed as an authorized pickup person for Max Hall. Hall? I kept my voice level. There's been a mistake. I'm Aaron Bishop, Max's father. The secretary's frown deepened. Sir, according to our records, Max Hall's father is Derek Hall. If you'd like to contest this, you'll need to speak with Principal Sells tomorrow morning with proper documentation. I showed her my driver's license, my military ID, even pulled up photos on my phone of me with Max at last year's father-son camping trip. She was sympathetic but firm. The school's records had been officially changed, complete with what appeared to be court documentation. Forged court documentation, I realized. Someone had been very thorough. I waited in the parking lot until Brooke arrived to collect Max. She drove up in Derek's silver BMW, music thumping through expensive speakers. Max climbed into the passenger seat, my son, riding in another man's car, probably thinking this was normal now. They didn't see me following them home. Our house looked different. The garden had been redone, expensive landscaping that I definitely hadn't approved. Security cameras I'd installed had been repositioned, still recording, but now they had blind spots that hadn't existed before. Someone who didn't understand security systems had been tampering with my work. I parked down the street and called Brooke. "Aaron, honey." Her voice was bright, cheerful, and completely fake. "How's Dubai? You sound close." "I'm good. Just wanted to check in with the family. How are the kids?" "They're wonderful. Olivia made honor roll again, and Max scored 2 goals in his last soccer game. Derek was there to cheer him on since you couldn't make it. Derek seems to be around a lot these days." A pause. "He's been incredibly helpful with the business, and with the kids. They really like him." "I bet they do. Listen, I might be coming home earlier than expected. Some issues with the contract here." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh. Well, that would be nice, but don't feel like you have to rush. We're managing fine here." Managing fine. Without me. "I'll let you know. Kiss the kids for me." "Of course, love you." She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my rental car, watching my house, my home, and realized I was looking at enemy territory. The woman I'd been married to for 16 years, the mother of my children, had declared war on me, and she thought I didn't even know the battle had started. She was about to learn why that was a very dangerous assumption. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a Holiday Inn downtown and started planning like I was running an op behind enemy lines, because that's exactly what this was. First, I needed intelligence. Real intelligence, not the carefully curated fiction Brooke had been feeding me. I started with the basics: financial records, phone logs, social media metadata. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. The affair had been going on for 6 months. Derek Hall wasn't just some business partner. He was positioning himself to replace me entirely. Joint business accounts, shared credit cards, even a lease agreement for office space that listed both of them as partners in life and business. But the kids were the real target. Every legal document, every school form, every medical record had been systematically altered. On paper, Derek Hall was becoming their father, while I was being erased, one form at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from my old army buddy Marty. "Heard you were back in town. Beer?" Marty Chen ran a small private investigation business in Cleveland's Flats district, the kind of guy who knew everyone and heard everything. If I needed backup, he was my first call. "Need to ask you something," I said when we met at Murphy's Pub on West 25th. "Hypothetically, if someone wanted to forge custody documents, how would they do it?" Marty raised an eyebrow. "Hypothetically? They'd need someone with access to court filing systems, someone who knew how to make fake documents look real. Maybe a paralegal, maybe a court clerk with flexible ethics." He studied my face. "This isn't hypothetical, is it?" I showed him the school records, the forged court papers, everything I'd discovered. Marty whistled low. "Aaron, this is serious fraud. Identity theft, forgery, probably parental kidnapping if you want to push it. Your wife's not just cheating, she's committing felonies." "I know. Question is, what am I going to do about it?" "Call the police, call a lawyer. Get your kids back, legally." I shook my head. Legal takes time, months, maybe years. Meanwhile, my kids think Derek Hall is their new daddy, and Brooke gets to play victim. Poor abandoned wife, husband never home, found love with a better man. So what's the alternative? I smiled, and Marty actually leaned back in his chair. I'm going to destroy them, completely, publicly, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. The next morning, I drove to Olivia's school during drop-off time. I wanted to see this new family dynamic in person. Derek's BMW pulled up right on schedule. Brooke got out first, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover, designer clothes, perfect hair, the kind of effortless beauty that took hours to achieve. Derek emerged from the driver's side, tall and lean in an expensive suit that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments. My kids climbed out of the back seat, backpacks slung over shoulders, looking comfortable and happy. That hurt more than I'd expected. I watched Derek ruffle Max's hair, watched Brooke kiss Olivia's forehead. They looked like a family, a perfect, wealthy, stable family. Everything I apparently wasn't. "Mr. Bishop?" I turned. Principal Sells stood behind me, a thin woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. "I thought that was you. I heard you were overseas. Just got back. Thought I'd surprise the kids." Her expression was carefully neutral. "I see. Well, there have been some changes to their records recently. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office." Principal Sells had been running Riverside Elementary for 12 years. She'd seen every kind of family drama, every type of custody dispute, every flavor of parental manipulation. She wasn't easily fooled. "The documentation looked legitimate," she said, closing her office door behind us. "Court orders, legal name changes, updated custody agreements, but something felt off." "Off how?" "Your wife was very insistent that everything be changed immediately. No transition period, no gradual adjustment. And Mr. Hall," she paused. "He seemed very eager to establish his authority here. Too eager, if you understand me." I understood perfectly. Derek was overplaying his hand, pushing too hard to cement his position. Classic amateur mistake. "What would you need to reverse these changes?" "Proper legal documentation, proof that the original filings were fraudulent and—" She hesitated. "This is a difficult situation, Mr. Bishop. Your children seem happy with the current arrangement. Any disruption needs to be handled very carefully." She was right, and that was the most frustrating part. Brooke and Derek had been smart about this. They'd made themselves indispensable to my kids before making their move. Olivia and Max weren't being held against their will. They were being seduced away from me with expensive gifts, fun activities, and constant attention. I spent the rest of the day conducting surveillance on my own family. I followed Derek to his office, a glass and steel monument to tech industry excess in downtown Cleveland. I watched him lunch with clients, all handshakes and confident smiles. He was good at playing the successful entrepreneur, but I noticed things others might miss. The way he checked his phone obsessively, the nervous energy that made him fidget with his expensive watch, the slightly too loud laugh that suggested he was performing rather than genuinely enjoying himself. Derek Hall was insecure, probably always had been. Brooke represented more than just a beautiful woman. She was validation, proof that he'd made it, that he deserved his success. That insecurity was going to be his downfall. That evening, I finally went home. Brooke was in the kitchen, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. She'd always been a good cook, but this spread was excessive. Multiple courses, expensive wine, the good china we usually saved for holidays. "Aaron!" She spun around, and for just a moment, I saw genuine shock in her eyes. Then the mask slipped back into place. "You didn't tell me you were coming home today." "Wanted to surprise you, and the kids. They're upstairs doing homework. This is wonderful. I was just making dinner for Derek. He's been helping me with some business planning, but there's plenty for everyone." Right on cue, Derek's BMW pulled into the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I watched him grab a bottle of wine from his passenger seat, check his reflection in the car window, and walk toward my front door like he owned the place. "Brooke, I brought that Pinot you—" Derek stopped when he saw me standing in my own kitchen. "Derek, you remember my husband Aaron," Brooke said quickly. He just got back from Dubai. Derek recovered smoothly, extending his hand with a politician's smile. Aaron, great to finally meet you properly. Brooks told me so much about your work. His grip was firm but not challenging. He was playing this carefully, positioning himself as the reasonable business partner, nothing more. But I caught the way his eyes flicked around the kitchen, noting details, memorizing the layout of my home. Derek's been incredible, Brooke said, her voice slightly too bright. The event planning business is really taking off, and he's got connections throughout the city. That's great, I said. Always nice when business partners become such close friends. Derek's smile flickered for just a moment. Brooke's an amazing woman. You're very lucky. I am, and I protect what's mine. The temperature in the kitchen dropped 10 degrees. Derek's smile became more forced, and Brooke started bustling around with unnecessary urgency. Well, she said, let's get dinner started. Aaron, why don't you go get cleaned up? You must be exhausted from traveling. I was being dismissed from my own kitchen, by my own wife, in favor of another man. Actually, I think I'll stay. I'm curious about this business venture. Derek, tell me more about your background. For the next hour, I subjected Derek to the kind of polite interrogation I'd once used on suspected insurgents. Where did you grow up? What's your educational background? Previous business experience? Family situation? Derek answered smoothly, but I was listening for more than just his words. I was cataloging inconsistencies, noting the topics that made him uncomfortable, identifying pressure points. He'd grown up middle class in Akron, worked his way through Kent State, built his first tech company from nothing. Divorced 2 years ago, no kids, lived alone in his downtown condo. He was proud of his success, but defensive about his origins. Perfect. The kids came down for dinner, and I watched the family dynamic play out. Derek was good with them, attentive without being pushy, interested in their activities, generous with praise. But I noticed that he deferred to Brooke on any actual parenting decisions. He was still playing the role of family friend, not trying to replace me directly. Smart, but not smart enough. After Derek left, with a lingering hug for Brooke that lasted just a moment too long, I helped put the kids to bed. They were happy to see me, full of stories about school and friends and activities. They mentioned Derek naturally, casually, the way kids talk about any adult who's become part of their routine. Derek took us to that new arcade last weekend, Max said as I tucked him in. He's really good at the racing games. That sounds fun. He said maybe when you get back we could all go together, like a family thing. I kissed my son's forehead and turned off his light, my heart breaking and my rage building in equal measure. Brooke was waiting for me in our bedroom, wearing a silk nightgown I'd never seen before. She looked beautiful, seductive, like she was trying to remind me what I'd be losing. It's so good to have you home, she said, moving closer. I've missed you. Have you? She stopped, sensing the ice in my voice. Of course I have. Aaron, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I'm just tired. Long flight. I went into the bathroom and closed the door, staring at myself in the mirror. The man looking back had spent 20 years learning how to hunt enemies, how to gather intelligence, how to strike at exactly the right moment for maximum damage. Brooke and Derek thought they were playing games with some clueless husband who'd never see it coming. They had no idea what they'd just unleashed. I woke up at 0500 hours, old military habits kicking in. Brooke was still asleep beside me, looking peaceful and innocent in the morning light. Amazing how deceptive appearances could be. I made coffee quietly and settled into my home office, the one room in the house that Brooke rarely entered. She claimed my military memorabilia and technical equipment made her uncomfortable. More likely, she was smart enough to stay away from the one space where I kept my real tools. Time to go to work. First priority, documenting everything. I photographed every forged document, every altered school record, every suspicious financial transaction. I created encrypted backups and stored them in 3 separate cloud accounts that Brooke couldn't access. If this went legal, I'd need bulletproof evidence. Second priority, understanding the enemy's plan. I pulled up Brooke's phone records, easy enough when you're the primary account holder and know how to navigate telecom databases. The pattern was clear. Dozens of calls to Derek, but also to a law firm downtown, a private investigator, and most interesting of all, a real estate agent. They weren't just planning to steal my family, they were planning to disappear with them. I dug deeper into Derek's background, using resources that weren't exactly available to the general public. His business was successful, but leveraged to the hilt. The downtown condo was mortgaged at 90%. His divorce had been expensive, and his ex-wife was still receiving substantial alimony payments. Derek Hall looked rich, but he was actually cash poor and debt-heavy. Brooke represented more than just a trophy wife. She was a financial lifeline, especially if she came with half of my assets in a divorce settlement. My phone buzzed. A text from Brooke. Taking kids to school. Derek's picking me up for client meeting afterward. Don't wait up. Don't wait up. At 8:30 in the morning. I watched from my office window as Derek's BMW pulled into the driveway. Brooke emerged from the house looking like she was heading to a photo shoot, not a business meeting. She kissed both kids goodbye, waved cheerfully at Derek, and climbed into the passenger seat. I gave them a 5-minute head start, then followed. They didn't go to any client meeting. Instead, Derek drove to the Ritz-Carlton downtown, where they disappeared into the hotel bar. I parked across the street and used a telephoto lens to document their business meeting. Hand-holding, intimate conversation. A kiss that lasted long enough for me to capture from 3 different angles. At 11:30 they moved upstairs. Room 412, based on the window where they appeared briefly before closing the curtains. I sat in my car, watching my wife cheat on me in real time, and felt something cold and calculating settle into my chest. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. They emerged 2 hours later, looking satisfied and relaxed. Brooke checked her reflection in the hotel's glass doors, smoothing her hair and adjusting her clothes. Derek's hand rested possessively on her lower back as they walked to his car. I followed them back to Derek's office building, where Brooke spent another hour presumably legitimizing their afternoon with actual business discussions. Then Derek drove her home, dropping her off with another lingering kiss. By the time I got back to the house, Brooke was in full domestic goddess mode, preparing snacks for the kids, starting dinner, humming softly to herself. She looked happier than I'd seen her in months. "How was your day?" she asked when I walked into the kitchen. "Productive. Caught up on some things I'd been missing." "That's good. Derek and I had a great meeting with a potential client. Big corporate event. Could be worth 6 figures if we land it." The lies came so easily. She'd had years of practice, apparently. "Sounds promising. When do you hear back?" "Next week, hopefully. This could really change everything for us." Change everything. She had no idea how right she was. That evening, I helped Olivia with her algebra homework, while Max played video games nearby. Normal family time, except nothing about this was normal anymore. "Dad?" Olivia looked up from her textbook. "Are you going to be traveling as much now?" "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Why?" "Derek said maybe you'd want to stay home more. He said sometimes parents get tired of being away from their families." I kept my expression neutral. "Derek said that?" "Yeah. He talks about you sometimes. He thinks you work too hard." "What else does Derek say about me?" Olivia shrugged. "Just that he understands why you have to travel for work, but maybe it's hard on Mom and us. He said some dads choose their jobs over their families." My daughter was repeating Derek's psychological manipulation word for word, probably without even realizing it. He was poisoning my children against me slowly, carefully, making them question my priorities and my love for them. That night, after Brooke fell asleep, I went back to my office and made a decision. Legal action would take too long and might not even work. Brooke and Derek had been thorough in covering their tracks. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated who they were dealing with. I spent the next 3 days conducting full surveillance on both targets. Brooke's routine was predictable. Drop kids at school, meet Derek for business meetings that were actually hotel visits, lunch with her gossip circle at the country club, pick up kids, prepare dinner, maintain the perfect wife facade. Derek's schedule was more interesting. He was juggling multiple business deals, all of them borderline desperate attempts to generate cash flow. His company was 3 months behind on office rent, his personal credit cards were maxed out, and he owed his ex-wife $40,000 in back alimony. More importantly, Derek had a weakness: his ego. He couldn't resist showing off, especially around other successful men. He name-dropped clients, exaggerated his wealth, and made promises he couldn't keep. That weakness was going to destroy him. On Thursday morning, I made my first move. I called Derek's office, using a voice-changing app to disguise my identity. "Mr. Hall, this is James Morrison from the Better Business Bureau. We've received some complaints about your company's billing practices. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss these allegations." Derek's assistant put me on hold, then came back with a nervous voice. "Mr. Hall would like to know who specifically filed these complaints. I'm not at liberty to discuss that over the phone, but I can tell you they involve overcharging clients and failing to deliver promised services. If Mr. Hall would like to resolve this quietly, he should meet with me today." I gave them the address of a coffee shop downtown and hung up. Derek showed up 30 minutes early, looking anxious and overdressed. He ordered an expensive latte and kept checking his phone, clearly stressed about this mysterious meeting that would never happen. I watched him from across the street, documenting his obvious distress. After an hour of waiting, Derek called his office, had a heated conversation with his assistant, and stormed out looking furious and embarrassed. Strike one. That afternoon, I called Brooke's country club friends, using a different voice app and claiming to be a reporter investigating social media influencers who promote fake business ventures. "I'm particularly interested in Brooke Bishop's new event planning company," I told Jennifer Walsh, the biggest gossip in their social circle. "Several sources suggest the business might not be legitimate." "Oh my," Jennifer said, and I could practically hear her salivating over this potential scandal. I hadn't heard anything like that. What kind of sources? Former clients, mostly. Allegations of taking deposits for events that were never delivered. I can't say more, but you might want to be careful about any business dealings with Mrs. Bishop. Within 2 hours, Brooke's phone was ringing constantly. Her friends were calling with concerned questions about her business, her reputation, her association with Derek Hall. Strike two. Friday morning, I implemented the final phase of my intelligence gathering. I needed to get inside Derek's condo, to understand how he lived, what he valued, where he was vulnerable. I waited until Derek left for work, then approached his building wearing a maintenance uniform I'd purchased online. The doorman barely glanced at my fake work order as I headed for the service elevator. Derek's condo was exactly what I'd expected: expensive furniture, impressive electronics, carefully curated art that screamed successful bachelor. But I was looking for more personal details. His home office revealed everything I needed to know. Financial documents showed he was leveraged beyond any reasonable limit. Legal papers from his divorce revealed a bitter, expensive battle that had left him nearly bankrupt. Most interesting of all, I found a notebook where Derek had been planning his future with Brooke, complete with timelines for my elimination from the picture. Phase 1, establish relationship with family, was already checked off. Phase 2, document Aaron's neglect, absence, was in progress. Phase 3, legal action for custody, divorce, was scheduled for next month. Phase 4, marriage and relocation, was tentatively planned for next summer. Derek had been treating the destruction of my family like a business project, complete with milestones and deliverables. I photographed everything, then planted a small surveillance device in his home office. If Derek and Brooke wanted to play games, they were going to play by my rules now. As I left Derek's building, I felt the familiar calm that came before action. The intelligence-gathering phase was complete. I understood my enemy's capabilities, motivations, and weaknesses. Now it was time to destroy them. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, typical Cleveland autumn weather that matched my mood perfectly. Brooke was making pancakes when I came downstairs, playing the perfect mother role while Derek's BMW sat in our driveway. "Derek's taking us all to the art museum today," she announced cheerfully. "He thought it would be nice for the kids to see the new exhibit." "All of us?" "Well, you're welcome to come if you want, but I know museums aren't really your thing." She was right. I preferred history to art, battlefields to galleries, but today was different. "Actually, that sounds great. Family outing." Brooke's smile flickered for just a moment. This wasn't part of her plan. Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking casual in expensive jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than most people's car payments. "Aaron, didn't expect to see you up so early. Wouldn't miss it. Looking forward to spending quality time with my family." The emphasis on my family wasn't subtle, and Derek caught it. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The drive to the museum was tense. Derek drove while Brooke sat in the passenger seat, playing navigator despite the fact that we all knew exactly where the Cleveland Museum of Art was located. I sat in the back with my kids, watching Derek's eyes in the rearview mirror, noting how he kept glancing at me with barely concealed irritation. "So Derek," I said conversationally, "Brooke tells me business is really taking off. Must be exciting, building something new." "It is. Brooke's incredibly talented. She has vision." "Vision's important. Of course, execution matters too. I imagine you've had some challenges, being new to the event planning industry." Derek's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Every business has challenges." "Absolutely. I was talking to a friend who works in corporate event planning, and she mentioned the market's pretty saturated right now. Lots of established companies competing for the same clients." "We're doing fine." "I'm sure you are. It's just interesting. Career changes at our age. Must take considerable financial resources to get started." Brooke turned around to face me, her eyes flashing with warning. "Aaron, maybe we should talk about something else." "Of course. Derek, what about your previous business? Tech, wasn't it? That must have been lucrative." "It was successful, yes." Past tense? A long pause. I sold my stake to focus on new opportunities. I already knew Derek hadn't sold anything. His tech company had failed, leaving him with massive debt and a wounded ego, but I let him maintain his fiction for now. At the museum, Derek tried to play the cultured sophisticate, explaining paintings to my children, dropping names of artists and movements. He was showing off, trying to demonstrate his superiority over their blue-collar father, who spent his time in dangerous places with dangerous people. "This is a Monet," Derek told Olivia as they stood before a water lily painting. "He was part of the Impressionist movement in France." "I know," Olivia said. "We studied him in art class." "Of course you did. You're very smart. Both of you kids are. You get that from your mother." The implication was clear. Their intelligence came from Brooke, not from me. I watched this performance for an hour, letting Derek dig himself deeper into the role of substitute father before making my move. "Kids, why don't you go check out the armor exhibit? I want to talk to Derek and your mom about something." Olivia and Max wandered off, excited to see medieval weapons and chainmail. I waited until they were out of earshot, then turned to face Derek and Brooke. "We need to have a conversation." Brooke's face went pale. "Aaron, what are you—" "Room 412 at the Ritz-Carlton, Tuesday afternoon, 2 hours." Derek actually took a step backward. "I don't know what you're talking about." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photographs I'd taken. Derek and Brooke entering the hotel. Derek's hand on Brooke's back, their kiss in the lobby. You son of a bitch, Derek said, his cultured facade cracking. You followed us? I'm a security consultant, Derek. Following people is what I do for a living. Brooke grabbed my arm. Aaron, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been systematically erasing me from our children's lives, how you forged court documents to change their names, how you've been stealing money from our joint accounts to fund your affair? Derek stepped forward, trying to look threatening. You need to calm down. Do I? I smiled, and Derek actually flinched. You know what I think, Derek? I think you're a fraud, failed businessman, buried in debt, desperate enough to steal another man's family because you can't build one of your own. That's enough, Derek said, his voice shaking with rage. Is it? Let's talk about your company. 3 months behind on rent, creditors calling daily, ex-wife suing for back alimony. You're broke, Derek. Worse than broke. You're leveraged to the point where one missed payment brings down your whole house of cards. Derek's face went red. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know about your maxed-out credit cards, your second mortgage, your desperate attempts to find investors for a business that exists only on paper. You need Brooke's divorce settlement to save yourself from bankruptcy. Aaron, stop, Brooke pleaded. And you, I turned to my wife. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? The forged documents, the changed school records, the secret credit cards? I've spent 20 years hunting people who didn't want to be found. You're not exactly a criminal mastermind. Tears were streaming down Brooke's face. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen. You made choices, both of you. And now you're going to live with the consequences. Derek had recovered some of his composure. What do you want? I want my family back. My real family. Not whatever twisted version you two have been constructing. And if we don't cooperate? I showed them more photographs on my phone. Derek entering his building, Brooke at the country club, both of them at various restaurants and hotels. Then I release everything. Photos, financial records, forged documents, hotel receipts. I send them to your clients, Derek, to your ex-wife's lawyer, to the school board, the country club, everyone in Brooke's social circle. I destroy both of you publicly and completely. Derek was sweating now despite the museum's air conditioning. You're bluffing. Am I? You've been investigating me, Derek. What did you learn? His silence was answer enough. I thought so. 20 years military intelligence, 10 years private security. I've ended careers, destroyed businesses, ruined lives. It's what I do when people threaten what's mine. Brooke was sobbing openly now, drawing stares from other museum visitors. Derek looked like he might be sick. Here's what's going to happen, I continued quietly. You're going to return every document to its original form. School records, bank accounts, everything. You're going to end this charade of a business partnership. And Derek, you're going to disappear from our lives completely. And if we do all that, Derek asked, then maybe I don't destroy you. Maybe I just let you crawl away quietly. Derek's hands were shaking. This is extortion. No, this is consequences. You want to play games with my family? Fine. But you're playing against someone who's very, very good at winning. I walked away to collect my children, leaving Derek and Brooke standing frozen beside the Monet. The confrontation had gone exactly as planned. I demonstrated that I knew everything, that I had evidence, and that I was prepared to use it. But this was just the opening move. The real game was about to begin. On the drive home, in my car this time, with Derek following behind in his BMW like a whipped dog, I watched my wife in the passenger seat. She stared out the window, tears still flowing, her perfect facade finally cracked. Daddy, is Mom okay? Max asked from the back seat. She'll be fine, buddy. Just some grown-up stuff to work out. But Brooke wouldn't be fine. None of them would be, because they'd made the fatal mistake of underestimating their opponent. The war for my family had officially begun. The next week passed in tense silence. Brooke moved through the house like a ghost, maintaining minimal conversation and avoiding eye contact. Derek's BMW no longer appeared in our driveway. The kids noticed the change but didn't ask questions. They were smart enough to sense the adult tension without understanding its source. I used this quiet period to prepare my final assault. Through my surveillance device in Derek's condo, I learned that he and Brooke were still communicating, but now they were panicked and desperate. Their phone calls were frantic strategy sessions about damage control, exit plans, and increasingly desperate schemes to salvage their situation. They had no idea how much deeper the hole was about to get. On Thursday morning, I made my first public move. Derek's biggest potential client was Morrison Industries, a Fortune 500 company planning their annual shareholder meeting. Derek had been courting this account for months, promising them an exclusive, high-end event that would showcase their corporate success. I called Morrison's CEO directly. "Mr. Morrison, this is Aaron Bishop. I'm a security consultant and I need to warn you about Derek Hall and his event planning company." "I'm listening." "Mr. Hall is currently under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. His business partner, my wife, has been forging legal documents and stealing funds from joint accounts. I have evidence that suggests they may be planning to take client deposits and disappear." I emailed him the financial records, the forged documents, the hotel photographs. Everything. Morrison called Derek within the hour to cancel their contract. Strike one. That afternoon, I visited Derek's office building and had a conversation with his landlord, a pragmatic businessman who didn't appreciate tenants who were 3 months behind on rent. "I thought you should know," I told him. "Derek Hall is about to face some serious legal troubles, fraud charges, possibly federal crimes. You might want to consider your options before you get caught up in his problems." I showed him the evidence of Derek's financial situation, his forged documents, his systematic deception. The landlord was very interested, especially when I mentioned that Derek's business accounts might be frozen during the investigation. Derek received an eviction notice the next morning. Strike two. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Friday evening, Brooke's social circle was gathering for their weekly wine night at Jennifer Walsh's house. These women controlled the social hierarchy of our neighborhood. They decided who was accepted, who was shunned, who deserved sympathy or scorn. I made sure they had all the information they needed to make their decision about Brooke. Anonymous emails went to every woman in the group, containing photos of Brooke and Derek's affair, copies of the forged school documents, evidence of the financial fraud. But I presented it carefully, positioning Brooke not as a villain, but as a victim who had been manipulated by a desperate con man. The response was swift and brutal. By Saturday morning, Brooke's phone was ringing constantly with calls from her former friends. Some were sympathetic, offering support for the terrible situation she'd found herself in. Others were coldly judgmental, expressing disappointment in her choices. All of them wanted details. All of them wanted to know how deep the deception went. Brooke spent the weekend fielding these calls, trying to manage the social catastrophe that was engulfing her carefully constructed life. She aged 5 years in 2 days. But Derek was facing much worse. His ex-wife's lawyer had received copies of all the financial evidence, including proof that Derek had been hiding assets during their divorce proceedings. She immediately filed motions for contempt of court and demanded a complete audit of his finances. His business creditors, alerted by anonymous tips about his impending legal troubles, began demanding immediate payment on outstanding debts. His corporate credit lines were frozen pending investigation. Most devastating of all, I'd sent everything to the local news media. Derek Hall, once successful tech entrepreneur, was about to become the face of a very public fraud scandal. By Monday morning, Derek was finished. I watched from across the street as he was escorted from his office building by security guards, carrying his personal belongings in a cardboard box. His expensive suit looked rumpled, his confident demeanor completely shattered. He saw me watching and actually started walking toward me, probably planning some final confrontation. I stood my ground, hands relaxed at my sides, watching him approach with the calm patience of a predator. "You destroyed me," he said when he got close enough. His voice was hollow, defeated. "No, Derek. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. My business, my reputation, everything, gone. You should have thought about that before you decided to steal my family." Derek's face twisted with rage and desperation. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You're broke, unemployed, facing multiple lawsuits, and about to be criminally charged for fraud. You have nothing left to fight with." I leaned closer, lowering my voice to a whisper that only he could hear. "And if you ever come near my wife or children again, I'll finish what I started. Do you understand me?" Derek stared into my eyes and saw something that made him take an involuntary step backward. Whatever he saw there convinced him that I wasn't making an idle threat. He walked away without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. I never saw Derek Hall again. That evening, I sat down with Brooke in our kitchen. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained, like she'd been through a war, which, in a way, she had. "It's over," she said quietly. "Yes. Derek's gone. His business is finished. Everyone knows everything." That was the point. She looked at me with something that might have been respect mixed with fear. "I never realized how dangerous you could be. You never gave me a reason to be dangerous. Until now. What happens to us? To our marriage?" I considered the question carefully. Brooke had betrayed me, lied to me, tried to steal my children and destroy my life. But she was also the mother of my kids, and they needed stability. That depends on you. The school records have been corrected. The financial accounts have been restored. Derek is gone permanently. We can try to rebuild from here, or we can end this cleanly through divorce. And if we try to rebuild, then you earn back my trust slowly, over time, with complete transparency and absolute honesty. No secrets, no lies, no games. Brooke nodded slowly. "I can do that. We'll see." 6 months later, our marriage was stronger than it had been in years. Brooke had learned the hard way that I wasn't the absent, inattentive husband she'd convinced herself I was. I was a man who would go to any lengths to protect his family, even from threats that came from within. Derek Hall declared bankruptcy and moved back to Akron, where he took a job managing IT for a small manufacturing company. His dreams of wealth and status died in Cleveland, along with his reputation and his future. As for me, I went back to my security consulting work with a new appreciation for the home I'd fought so hard to save. My children never learned the full details of what had happened, but they understood that their family had survived a crisis and emerged intact. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about Derek's notebook and his carefully planned phases for destroying my life. He'd been methodical, patient, thorough in his approach. He'd just made one critical error in judgment. He'd assumed I would be a passive victim rather than an active opponent. It was a mistake he would never have the opportunity to make again.